So, for this video, we are going to be rating the Codex of Power entries, and we are going to be ranking them on a couple of statistics. I wanted to grab these pieces of gear out of the stash real quick to make this explanation go a little bit faster. So, if you did not know already, when you play the game, if you do these dungeons that appear on the map here, you will receive a reward in your collections page that is based off of a legendary aspect. If you go to your collection, go to the Codex of Power right here. There are 115 aspects in total. These are classified based into 5 categories. The defensive aspects are aspects that can be equipped onto the 3 equipped defensive pieces of gear, which would be your helm. You can equip those to the helm, chest, pants, if you have a shield if you're a necromancer, or the amulet slot. They can be equipped to those. Generally, they are going to have this shield icon on them, and this shield icon will also explain where you can equip them. Next up, you have your offensive aspects. Offensive aspects have this axe symbol on them. They can be equipped on one-handed, two-handed weapons, gloves, rings, and amulets. These are skills that are offensively minded. Although the offensive and defensive skills, while there are some clear differences, most defensive skills are not going to deal damage. Offensive skills don't always deal damage either. Sometimes they can be crowd control abilities that can help you deal damage in other ways. The harder categories to summarize are resource utility and mobility. Mobility aspects can specifically only be slotted onto your boots or your amulets. The boots themselves are generally one of the hardest pieces to gear up, so anytime you have an aspect that allows you to be slotted onto your boots that is decent, it's pretty good. Usually it's going to be mobility or utility. Resource is a category that is specific to your rings and does make a lot of choices. What makes some classes better than others, like one of the reasons why Barbarian is so good, is they have 4 offensive slots just off of their weapons, a 5th slot off of their gloves. This enables them to use their amulet and ring slots for other uses. The amulet slot is generally used for defensive options, and the ring slots are generally used both for resource options, less so damage options. However, if you were to compare this to another class such as Necromancer, or Druid, where Druid in particular, they only have access to a 2-handed weapon or a one-hander and an offhand. Meaning offensively, they're only guaranteed 3 slots, the gloves and the weapons. And that's if they choose to run a main hand and an offhand. Amulets are generally used as an extra tool for offensive purposes. And the ring slots can be either overlap between offensive options or they can be resource options. Although Druid doesn't usually use resource. So you see how the differences in your class will determine this. Specifically, I'm over here at the Occultist because it might make it easier in case I want to show you some rolls. One problem that the Codex of Power is that it doesn't tell you specifically what the roll range is. So why are we ranking this video? The easiest way to explain this and to rank this is to look at a piece of gear. So, this glove right here. After swapping weapons 10 times, your next attack will overpower and deals 30% increased overpower damage. That is 30% to 50% damage range. Codex of Power entries, if they have a numerical stat like this, will always be the lowest roll available. It will always be that 30%. However, that option is always available to you in Codex of Power. Meaning, say I'm going to filter by Barbarian. Let's say, as a Barbarian, I need to get this Whirlwind aspect. I need this Whirlwind aspect for my build. Now, if I need to upgrade a piece of gear and I don't have a spare aspect in my inventory, I would then need this aspect. I would need this role of an aspect in order to even equip the new weapon. And if you will notice in my aspect tab why I have all these, what I do with my excess legendaries is I will take excess legendaries that have decent rolls, and I will either decent to good rolls, like this one right here is a max roll. I will pull that aspect off of a piece of gear, especially if it's off of a common legendary as opposed to a sacred legendary. I will pull it off that piece of gear. So, this two-handed slashing weapon right here, if I decide to upgrade this two-handed slasher to another category, to another better version of the weapon, let's say I get an item power 720 that is dealing, base 720 unupgraded, that is dealing, 1800 damage and has strength and all stats to it. Let's say I get something like that. I don't have to use the low roll codex. I can come over here and throw on one of the ones I have in here. Most players don't have that luxury, particularly in the early game. So, what we're going to do is we are going to be going over the Codex of Power entries, and we are going to go individually. I will warn you, I'm not going to be judging Rogue at all, because I do not play Rogue. So let's start at the back with the easiest ones. I'm going to be tiering these into 3 categories: 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. A 1-star is generally either a bad aspect or an aspect where the roll on it matters so much that you want to upgrade it as quickly as possible to an actual version of the aspect, not just the cheap roll. So 1-star aspects are generally avoided. 2-star aspects, let me see if I can give you an example here. 2-star aspect, like this one right here for Crackling Energy, where collecting Crackling Energy increases movement speed 10% for 4 seconds. 2-star, this is a 1-star aspect because the Crackling Energy build is kind of meh. Even if it is, you're not really using that movement speed bonus that often on the Crackling Energy build. A 2-star aspect is an aspect where the aspect is good, but it requires a higher roll, so you want to prioritize it. Or it is an aspect that isn't as necessary to a build. It's what you would consider a slot-in skill. A lot of these are going to be in 2-star categories, are going to be 1-star or 2-star. A 3-star aspect is an aspect that you can grab from the Codex of Power if you're running it in your build, and you never have to worry about upgrading it because you're still getting the value out of it long term. There are a few classes that have that. So enough with the intro, let's talk about mobility. Mobility only has 6 options, but these are only going on your boot or your amulet. Generally, you're never going to put it on your amulet because you want your slot to be higher. So, you have Wind Striker aspect, critical strikes grant 8% movement speed for 1 second up to 6 seconds. So, this enables you to get movement speed off of crits. This is very good for certain builds, Whirlwind Barbarian, Bone Necro, Lightning Sorceress, etc. However, the downside to this is that the critical strike bonus, while it does stack, you can get a bunch of crits together. An individual crit is only going to give you 1 second. And that movement speed bonus is generally not very good in combat. It's helpful for traversing combat, not in combat. So the fact that this bonus can't be stacked up more kind of keeps this as a 1-star aspect to me. Even though I do like mobility, I like movement speed, but I don't like movement aspects. Similarly, the Ghost Walker aspect is going to be a 1-star aspect. The reason for this is that you want that increased movement speed bonus to be a little bit higher. While Unstoppable, not a lot of classes have access to Unstoppable. Necromancer has Blood Mist, and this is kind of necessary because it turns Blood Mist into a mobility tool. Druids with Earthen Bulwark or Trample, Barbarians with Rallying Cry, Wrath of the Berserker, Charge, Sorceress with Deep Freeze, although Deep Freeze will, well, no, because it lasts for the duration, but you have Deep Freeze, you have Flame Shield, you have Teleport. This can be a way to get bonus movement speed afterwards, especially for the mobility aspect of being able to move through enemies. So I'll bump this up to a 2-star aspect. But at the same time, this is not something I'm generally running. There is a better option for boots for crowd control than this, because the main issue is that this requires you to have crowd control immunity in place to get the movement speed. Charge aspect is a 1-star. We already covered this. Crackling energy, increasing movement speed. I don't recommend this. The crackling energy build can be fun, and it is good, but it doesn't care about movement speed as much as people think. High end game, when you're pushing tier 100, when you're pushing, you know, torment dungeons and things of that nature, yeah, sure, but early to mid game, this is very, very bad, and most of the time you're going to want to increase that movement speed bonus anyways. The aspect of perpetual stomping for Barbarian is very good. This is a 3-star. There is no scaling to this whatsoever, meaning once you have this dungeon unlocked, anytime you have an aspect with this on it, you can immediately sell or salvage that. You no longer... You can literally come to the Codex and imprint it off of the Codex. It is what you would consider to be a free option, and that is why it is a 3-star. One downside, just as a nitpick to the build, there are not enough options to reset cooldown. So, for example, Kick and Ground Stomp can be used to reset Leap's cooldown specifically. I would prefer if this was changed to Leap or Charge's cooldown to give you just a little bit more incentive, because if you want to run this aspect, like if you're already running Ground Stomp and you think, hey, I can run Leap in here as well, I like running that brawling build that runs Kick and Charge and Leap, and it's kind of annoying that I don't have another option to reset the cooldown for Leap besides Kick. I could run Ground Stomp, but I don't have the room. And I kind of wish it could move over to Charge as well, although that's me being nitpicky. Aspect of Bounding Conduit. This is very good. However, it's going to be a 2-star. So the reason why, again, similarly to the other one, gaining movement speed after teleporting is very good, particularly if you have the damage reduction equipped for 3 seconds after teleporting. These two stack very well together. However, you would want more than a 20% movement speed bonus. It's nice, but it's not great. So it's one of those aspects that you're looking for a higher roll on it if you can. And because it's not a mandatory part to most players' builds, then that's the main reason why it's on the lower end. Lastly, you have Flamewalker's aspect. This is coming in contact with your firewall, grants you 15% movement speed for 4 seconds. This is, again, a 2-star. It's good. It's extra mobility for Sorceress. However, I would like a slightly stronger bonus than 15%. 15% bonus is a little bit weaker, so you want to upgrade this as quickly as possible. Also, firewall builds are generally putting more investment into other things such as burn or other forms of crowd control. I wonder, do I have it on the character right now? I'm hoping no, I have that, don't. Oh no, I have that. Do I have the stun? I do not. Okay. This weapon mastery one is very good, by the way, for barbarians specifically. I don't have the generic aspect, but there's an aspect where every 20 seconds you stun enemies for a certain amount of time based off of if there's 5 enemies around you. That can be slotted on boots, and that is a very, very good tool in this slot. Next up is utility. Utility can be slotted onto anything that is specifically not a weapon. So, shield, it can't go on pants, it goes on shield, helms, chests, amulets, gloves, and boots. So it cannot go on a ring, it cannot go on a main weapon, and it cannot go on pants. However, this is a very useful slot for filling out the pesky boot slot, as well as giving you extra flexibility, in your build options. First off, we have aspect of Singe Extremities. This is specifically for a fire sorceress. After Immobilize wears off, enemies are slowed by 40% for 4 seconds. This is a 3-star. This is very good. The reason why it's good is it's an additional form of crowd control with a relatively significant value. The main reason to me, though, is it's just extra crowd control. Fire Sorceress likes to build around crit and Immobilize in order to get extra procs. You have the damage over time, you have the crit damage potential, and then you have the Immobilize form of crowd control. This giving you an additional form of crowd control to get other damage affixes from is very helpful. I also find this helpful in team play because any extra type of crowd control is helpful. You never know who around you is going to be running what build. While the duration is not what scales, the percentage of the slow is what scales, is the main benefit to me why this is a 3-star and not 2-star. If the duration is what scaled up, then this would obviously be lower. But the fact that it lasts for 4 seconds, even a 20 or a 30% slow is good at this point. Next up, for the Barbarian, you have Lucky Hit, Aspect of Anemia. This is, anytime a Lucky Hit procs, you have a chance for direct damage against a bleeding enemy to apply up to a 20% chance to stun them for 2 seconds. Now, Lucky Hits are always kind of complicated. To explain this ahead of time, we're not going to be factoring in the Lucky Hit aspect in judging this. We're simply going to be looking at, if the Lucky Hit procs, the skill being valid. Because a lot of people say the Lucky Hit aspects aren't very good because they require you to proc in the first place, and then once they do proc, there's a chance that the skill itself procs. I'm not going to really get into that. So let's just, if it says Lucky Hit, I will mention it, but we're just going to skip over the percentage of a percentage bullshit argument. This is a good skill for Barbarian. Most Barbarians in their skill tree, I can actually show this right now since I'm on Barbarian. Most Barbarians in their skill tree are going to be running Thorns or Outbursts. At least I recommend that they run this, because this levels with the individual player, and any Thorns damage is good. It's good passive damage if enemies hit you. You're a melee character. You're going to get hit a lot. The other reason why is because of Tough as Nails. Tough as Nails increases your Thorns by percentage damage, but it also applies bleeding damage whenever anyone hits you. You can legitimately put 3 points into Outburst and 1 point into Tough as Nails, and you are guaranteed anytime an enemy hits you, you're applying bleed damage to them for no work. Other ways you can get bleed damage as a Barbarian include off of Lunge, actual bleed builds, but besides bleed builds, you have Lunge, Whirlwind, Tough as Nails, key passive. What's the other one? There's another one that does it, I think. And then Maelstrom. Maelstrom has bleed damage. Iron Maelstrom. So this is a very good build for Barbarians. I think a lot of people really sleep on putting the points in this. My Bludgeon Barbarian that doesn't really care about Thorns, they're more based around Fortify, still has 3 into Outburst, 1 into Tough as Nails. Just because you want that bleed damage. Bleed damage on Barbarian is always a significant bonus to you. So this skill is very good because you can get bleed off of an enemy hitting you. Then when you hit them, you get a 20% chance to stun them. This is good in my opinion. It's extra crowd control. It's relatively significant. The only downside to this is you would like that percentage to be higher. However, I'm still going to say that this is a 3-star if you run it, a 2-star if you're not. The ballistic aspect in theory is a good skill, and I run it, but it's one of those skills that you can phase off of your character relatively quickly. So it's going to be a 2-star. It's a flat bonus, meaning you never have to, once you unlock this dungeon, you never have to keep these aspects. Basically, anytime you have Fortify as a druid, all of your earth skills will gain 2 ranks to them for free. This can be any amount of Fortify. You can have 2% Fortify, and you get the +2. The downside is that this means that your earth skills will not have these ranks until you gain Fortify. Most of the time, that means you need to pop Earth and Bulwark at the start of a fight in order to gain Fortify to gain the +2, meaning your Earth and Bulwark might be on cooldown if you need it. The other downside to this is this only applies to Earth skills specifically. Now, if you have the Werebear legendary aspect with this, this is good, because then it can make your bear skills into Earth skills. However, one thing that is important to note is that this effect does not proc off of Nature's Fury. If you are Storm Druid Nature's Fury, Earth skills that are cast by Nature's Fury do not get their ranks do not receive ranks. They are the rank 1 version of an aspect. So if you try and run this in a Fortify Storm Druid type build, you don't get a lot of value. That's the main reason I have this at a 2-star rating, because it can be easily phased out. If you're Earth, or if you're Werebear and you have some Earth in it, you can get value out of this, but generally there's better slots, unless you're like chucking this on boots. I find myself chucking this on boots every now and then. The Barbarian Berserking aspect, fair warning, I'm not a fan of Berserking builds, but I'm going to judge these relatively fairly. The Relentless Berserker's aspect, a damaging an enemy with a core skill has a 22% chance to extend the duration of Berserking by 2 seconds, and it doubles the duration to 4 seconds if that was a critical strike. This is very good in 2 specific builds, which is two-handed slashing upheaval, or if this is whirlwind berserking. The two-handed slashing gets crits relatively often, and there is a way to get berserk off of that. Therefore, this can be a good way to get bonus berserking. If you do not want to run the basic bitch berserking build of like Frenzy, Whirlwind, Rallying Cry, War Cry, Wrath of the Berserker, Challenging Shout, if you're not looking to run that kind of basic berserk build I see a lot of people running, that can be a decent alternative. This skill itself is a decent 2-star approach. The downside that is holding it back is specifically that it requires you to damage an enemy with a core skill while berserking to increase the duration. If this granted you berserking for 2 seconds, this would be a much stronger aspect for berserking builds as opposed to extending the duration. The fact that you have to already be berserking to get this to work can sometimes be annoying. Next up, we have the Storm Shifters aspect. This is very similar to the other Druid one that we covered with Fortified. Whenever Hurricane is active, you gain +2 to your shape-shifting skills. This is primarily designed to be the Werewolf Storm Druid option for a utility slot. So whenever your Hurricane is active, it is active for a decent amount. You gain +2 to shape-shifting skills. This is very good if you are running that legendary aspect where Storm skills are now Werewolf skills, or vice versa. A lot of people love running Tempest Roar. This becomes mandatory because now you can run Hurricane as a Werewolf skill. If you want to focus on getting Hurricane's cooldown down as much as possible and its duration up as much as possible. This is very good for that specific build. It's a 3-star in my opinion because it's flat across the board. However, similar to the Werebear version of this, the fact that the aspect is only valid while Hurricane is active means that there are going to be times where this is completely useless to you. But yeah, and similar to the Fortify, the reason why I have the Fortify one up is because most people are trying to work their way towards Tempest Roar. It is one of the most sought-after unique items in the game, besides the Uber Uniques. The fact that it is on a first-name basis with the majority of the community already shows how impactful it is. That's the only reason why I have it as a 3 instead of a 2 compared to the other one. Shit, I skipped one. Next up, we have the Eluding aspect. This is a generic one, and it is a 3-star. This is good in any build or any character that lacks crowd control resistances. So, anytime you become injured while you are crowd controlled, you get Unstoppable, which ends your crowd control for 4 seconds. Now, this effect has a 40-second cooldown, although ideally you shouldn't be, getting crowd controlled that often. You should focus on trying to build around it. However, there's a few exceptions to this rule. If you are running a sorceress that lacks defensive skills, or if you're only running one defensive skill. I know a lot of lightning sorceresses that only run teleport. They don't run anything else defensively, and if teleport is on cooldown and they get caught, you're kind of dead. Necromancers literally have one skill, that being Blood Mist. Blood Mist is on cooldown, you kind of have to have this aspect. I love watching hardcore deaths of Necromancer players because it's 90% of their deaths are Blood Mist on cooldown, Blood Mist on cooldown, Blood Mist on cooldown, Blood Mist on cooldown, crowd controlled, Blood Mist on cooldown. This aspect becomes mandatory. And again, chuck it on a boot. It's the hardest slot to have to deal with, and it's fine. You could say that it should be a 2-star because you want that cooldown at 20 seconds. But in my opinion, this is a band-aid to balance issues with the classes themselves, not actually like something I would be slotting. If, for example, Necromancer had better crowd control, if, for example, Sorceress had better options for crowd control, if, for example, Barbarian had an extra crowd control option, if Druid didn't have one overwhelming fucking crowd control immunity option that everybody ran in Earth and Bulwark, if that was gone, or if they removed the crowd control immunity off of that, then this would be on Druid builds as well. The fact that crowd control is such a killer in the game is really what makes this aspect so good in any capacity. Even though generally being injured isn't the big thing. Next up, aspect of shared misery. Lucky hit whenever you hit a crowd-controlled enemy. 30% chance for that crowd control effect to spread to any unaffected enemy. Now, this is the thing that's important to note. This aspect is going to be a 2-star. While I love the aspect itself is a fantastic aspect in any build that is going to be running any form of crowd control. Stun, slow, freeze, chill. Immobilize. Any type of crowd control that is commonly proccing damage. Even slows. Slow can be good. This is very good. If you have the Butcher Cleaver and you're running a weird fear build where you're trying to go for crit, lucky hit, fear, this is very good. Here's the reason why this is a 2-star though, as much as I love the aspect. You really want that 50% version of this aspect. That 50% version of this aspect is so good compared to the other versions of this aspect. 30% is good if you like don't have anything else. If you're a build that is crowd controlling to death, Bludgeon Barbarian, any type of Ice Sorceress, if you can slot this, you kind of want to slot this. That's how good it is. The downside is you want the higher percentage, because there's a big difference between a 50% chance that you just get free crowd control and a 30% chance that you're getting free crowd control. A 30% chance means that if I crowd control 10 enemies, I'm probably going to actually only get about 12 enemies crowd control. 50% I crowd control 10 enemies, I'm getting massive value out of that. I can easily get another 20 as an example. Necromancer Iron Maiden. Enemies afflicted by Iron Maiden have a 15% chance to be stunned for 1 second when they deal direct damage. This is a 2-star aspect. I don't like the aspect. I don't like the build personally. The reason why it is, if you're running Iron Maiden and you can make the room for this, it's good. It's bonus stun anytime Iron Maiden is proccing, essentially. Yes, you want the chance to be higher than 15%, but it's extra crowd control in a situation where you don't normally have crowd control. Necromancer is lacking for crowd control a little bit, especially on some builds. They're more raw damage output. I think there's a lot that kind of goes into this that makes it like you have to run a lot in Iron Maiden builds to get value, which is why it's 2-star instead of 3-star. Even though I don't like the skill, I'm still judging it fairly. Next up, you have the aspect of Quicksand. This is damage from Earth skills slows enemies hit by 25% for 5 seconds. This is a 2-star. Now, I love this aspect. This aspect is mandatory for any Earth Druid. It's nice to have if you're Earth Werebear Druid. The reason why it's at 2-star is, yes, it gives you a slow, but in my opinion, the minimum for this should be 35%. Like, if they wanted to buff this aspect, they could move it from 25 to 35%. Because the range on it currently is 25% to 50%. And at 40% and above is very good to run. That's where I'm running it. 40% and above. At 25%, I'm not really running it. It's nice. Again, I like extra crowd control. However, I wish it was a little bit stronger. That's why it's 2-star instead of 3-star. This is very much mandatory, though, if you are Earth Druid. This last one is Rogue. I do not play Rogue. I will not be reviewing this. My apologies in advance. The resource category is going to be a very hard category to judge because they only go on rings. You only get 2 rings. This means that a lot of builds have to choose between resource regeneration or using a ring slot for an additional form of offense of help. Some builds need that offensive help more than they need the resource regeneration. Pulverized druids are a good example of this. However, so these are going to have a little bit more of a harsher review on them. Aspect of Torment. Critical strikes with bone skills increases essence regeneration by 20% for 4 seconds. This is a 2-star. The aspect itself is incredible. Bone crits a ton. You want to build on crit and vulnerable anytime you're building bone. The essence regeneration is fantastic. The duration is good. However, why it's 2-star is you want a higher percentage on this. Remember that because these are specific to rings, this is not like where you can chuck it on an amulet and get a bonus. So you could go, hey, I'll just chuck this on an amulet and get 30%. Or I could chuck this on a 2-handed and get 40%. No. Because of that fact, you have to build around the ring itself. This is a 2-star. That percentage needs to be a high roll, not a low roll. Next up, we have Aspect of the Unsatiated. It's a hard word to say late at night. Unsatiated. We'll have some coffee, and then I'm going to say it again. Unsatiated. I don't know why that's so funny right now. After killing an enemy with Shred, your next werewolf skill will generate 20% more spirit and deal 20% increased damage. This is very good. This is a 3-star. It just is a straight buff. If you use your core skill and you kill an enemy, your next basic skill, core skill, wrath skill, or ultimate skill will deal damage. If you are running Tempest Roar, then again, you can benefit off of this. There are 2 drawbacks to this. Those 2 drawbacks do not hold it back from the 3-star rating because they are specific to the aspect itself. Number 1, you have to run Shred on a werewolf druid, which you don't want to do if you're running something like Tempest Roar, because Shred sucks. And number 2 is that your next werewolf skill will trigger this and remove this effect. So if you kill an enemy with Shred and then you immediately use Blood Howl or Cyclone Armor, you will lose this. You will lose this. That being said, this is still a very good thing to slot on a druid build. Next up, Sorceress. Prodigy's Aspect. Using a cooldown restores 15 mana. This is a 2-star. Again, the aspect is great. Most sorceresses are running multiple types of cooldowns. However, 2-star, 15 mana is not a lot. The fact that I can get 25 mana out of this is much stronger effect, and it becomes necessary when you look at this is essentially giving you half the cost of a core skill cast. Half at the low roll. Whereas at the high roll end, you're looking at a free core skill or half a mastery skill. Sometimes close to a whole mastery skill if you're using something with a lower mastery cost or if you've reduced your cost. Because this aspect isn't generating enough mana, it can be difficult to slot on the low roll, so it's only a 2-star. Next up, Incendiary Aspect, another Sorceress run. This one is getting changed in the patch on Tuesday, so I will warn you, they might change how this works. This is a lucky hit chance where any burning damage has a 12% chance to restore 10 mana. This is very good. This is a 3-star right now. After the change, we'll see. The reason why this is good is that you can slot the enchantment from Firebolt where all damage gives you burning damage for free. That will proc this ring currently. Again, after the patch, I don't know. I think they're changing it to where direct pyromancy skills have to deal the damage, which will be a nerf to the aspect overall, because now you can't get the value out of the enchantment. You have to have another thing. You might look at this and say, well, that's a low chance, and that's a low mana return. But any tick of burning damage has the chance to restore this. That's why the enchantment is so good right now. Because if all of your damage can deal burning damage, and any burning damage has that chance to restore the mana, this can be essentially a free source of mana relatively consistently. Aspect of Potent Blood. While at full life, blood orbs grant 10 essence. So this is specific to a blood necromancer or a weird corpse tendril blood wave shadow build. I've seen that run. This is a 3-star if you can make the room for it. If you have a way to generate blood orbs and you're full health, this means that your blood orbs can give you resource. There is a better resource aspect involving blood orbs. I was thinking about knocking this down to a 2-star because of that. However, if I want to be honest, this is a good aspect to run if you find yourself constantly out of essence. I don't have the room for both aspects, and I prefer the other one. Aspect of the Umbriel. This is going to be getting a buff in the next patch where it's going to go to, I believe it's going to go to 3 primary resource whenever you crowd control enemy. This is a 1-star. And the reason why it's a 1-star, at least in its current form, is that, think of it this way. If I am trying to cast a skill that has a requirement of, say, even 30. 30 is usually the average core skill requirement for a skill. I need to crowd control 30 enemies to get this to proc. One free cast. It's not worth it. At max roll, where it's at 3, it's still not worth running. Because now I need to crowd control 10 enemies. A lot of classes can do that. You know, a Storm Druid can do that. Think about it. You have Thunderstorm for a second or two, or you have Hurricane or Cataclysm up for a second. You can generate that very easily. However, it's not worth running. It's not worth running. It requires too much work for a low payoff. Flesh Rending Aspect. This is another Necromancer skill. After Decompose spawns a corpse, you gain 20 essence. This, in my opinion, is a 3-star. Decompose is one of the lesser used Necromancer basics, but every 2 seconds it spawns a corpse, which means every 2 seconds you can get a bonus 20 essence. And if you're running the chain effect on Decompose, where you get 3 corpses, then this aspect will give you 60 essence. This becomes a very good way to use Decompose as an essence generating tool. It does require another legendary slot to go alongside it, but the amount of essence that is gained doesn't really matter unless you drain yourself down to nothing and then decompose back to full. Just the ability to get essence off of something that is going to happen by using the skill is very good. Next up, we have the Requiem aspect. This is a 2-star. So this increases your maximum essence per every active minion. This is also a set value as well, meaning if your minions die in combat, your maximum essence in combat will be reduced. The idea of this is that if you have a golem, if you have your 3 mages, and you have, let's say, 4 skeleton warriors base, that is 8 minions. That means that you will be getting 24 extra maximum essence. You could, if you run extra slots, obviously you'll have extra essence, but just looking at that as a baseline, for Summon Mancers, this is a 1-star. You do not want to run this. The reason why is that that maximum essence doesn't actually help you much. Sure, if you're maxing this out, you know, let's say you've got, you have an extra warrior in your amulet, and you're running skirmishers with the extra warrior, and you've got mages, and you've got the golem, and you're rocking, I think it was at like, let me see, 5, 8, 9. You're rocking 14 minions, and you go, yeah, look at how much extra essence I got. Here's the problem. If you're making that build, you want skills that directly benefit your minions more than just, I get an extra 1, maybe 1.5 casts of, say, Bone Spear. This is going to be good for Bloodlance summoners. Bloodlance is a very low essence cost. This can essentially, at full essence, you will essentially have like 10 Bloodlances at your disposal instead of 6. But outside of that one niche build, this is not worth running. And even in that one niche build, I would rather have Blood Orps, because I can get much more essence regeneration than this one ring. Next up, we have the recharging aspect. This is each time Chain Lightning bounces off of you, you gain 4 mana. And this is trash. It is a 1-star. It is unfortunate, because Chain Lightning does have a weird synergy when you bounce off of yourself that I like. However, it grants you 4 mana. Think of it this way. If Chain Lightning bounces off of you twice in a single cast, or 3 times in a single cast. Let's say it bounces off you 3 times in a single cast. Here's the thing. You got back 12 mana. You don't even have half the cost of your next Chain Lightning. Therefore, this is kind of just going in the trash. Lucky Hit. Windshear has up to a 7% chance to fully restore your spirit. This was recently buffed, by the way, from 5%. This is a 2-star. It's good. Windshear's a basic. If you can proc it, it's very good, because if you proc it first try and you go from no spirit to full spirit, great. The downside to this skill, A, it is Lucky Hit. This is one of the few times I have to mention the Lucky Hit. So you have a chance, and then that Lucky Hit percentage is, the percentage in the Lucky Hit is low. It's at a 2-star because you want this at the high roll. You want this at 12 or 14%. I forget if it caps at 12 or 14%. You want this in a position where you have the best possible chance to proc it. Outside of like I ended up taking this off of my Windshear, Druid, because I wasn't proccing it enough. Like, Earth and Might was actually stronger in this regard. Running Earth and Might with the Storm skill, with the aspect where Storm skills count towards Earth and Might, was actually more beneficial than this aspect, unfortunately. Which is funny, because the main reason I made a Windshear Druid was this aspect. But it is unfortunately a 2-star. Next up, we have the Hulking aspect. This is for Necromancers that use Golems. Your Golem has a 1% chance to reduce its active cooldown by 2 seconds each time it damages an enemy with a normal attack. In addition to this, it has a 1%... Fuck. Boo! Boo. Boo. I can have coffee. If you're wondering why the levels are so low compared to the last video I did, I have not had a lot of time to grind. I couldn't really sleep, so here we are with our video. Alright, let's go back to where we left off. Thank you, game. Appreciate you annoying me. 1% chance to reduce its cooldown, and 1% chance to spawn a corpse anytime it damages an enemy with its normal attack. So, this is, kind of a 1-star. And the reason is, your Golem attacks on its own, so it's not something that you have to trigger. The 1% chance is just bullshit. But also, look at what its value is. It helps for reducing its cooldown on its active attack for when you want to, like, make it do its slam attack. The chance to spawn the corpse is nice if you're playing around corpses. That's the main value to me, is the corpse version of it. But it's not worth the valuable ring slot for that. That's really the reason why it's at one star. In addition to that, the 1% chance is almost insulting. At a higher version, at a higher number, you could slot this ring into a build, but at a 1 star? No. No, sir. This is Rogue. I will comment on this. If you can apply Vulnerable, this is a 3-star skill. You're going to run this on anything. If you're not applying Vulnerable, first off, your Rogue build kind of sucks, and second off, it's not very good. But I will just mention that because 50% increased energy regeneration on a class that uses energy like it's going out of sale is insane. Next up, we have the slacking aspect. I'm just realizing that's a Pokemon reference for no apparent reason. Lucky hit chance. You have a 40% chance to gain 20 Fury when Rend deals direct damage to at least one bleeding enemy. This is very easy to do in a bleed build, meaning this is a relatively reliable source of Fury generation. This is a 3-star aspect, even though the bleed build itself sucks, Rend itself sucks, and it's a lucky hit chance. The fact, though, that you can run this, though, and just get value out of it. It's a 40% minimum roll. That's pretty good. In addition to that, 20 Fury out of Rend is particularly good. I'm on Barbarian once again, so I can check this real quick. Rend. That's this, right? Yes. Yeah, Fury cost of 35, meaning you can get a decent amount of your cooldown back. You're looking at about, what, 70%? Right around 70% of the Fury cost back just by, you know, swing Rend. Or even if an enemy hits you and Tough as Nails procs, and then you hit them with this. It's solid regeneration, even though it's for a shitty build. Fast Blood aspect, up 3-star. Blood Orbs reduce ultimate cooldown by 1 second. This is the low roll at 1 second. It's very good. The high roll is like 1.5 seconds. So basically it's 1 second. So you can just slot this on just about anything and get value. The fact that Blood Orbs reduce the cooldown on your ultimate, you need to spawn Blood Orbs. The Charlotte works better on Tidal Wave because they automatically spawn Blood Orbs in Tidal Wave. So you can just pick those up and automatically shave off your cooldown by about 3 seconds. It also has a lower cooldown. If you're a Bone Storm, this can be very good as well if you run Blood Bone Storm for whatever reason. This is just a solid aspect as long as you can generate Blood Orbs. I see a lot of people that do Corpse Tendril spawning Blood Orbs, and then they use those Blood Orbs to get Bone Storm back down. That's the most common use for it. But this is a mandatory slot if you use Blood Orbs. Next up, aspect of Unrelenting Fury. This is Barbarian. Killing an enemy with a core skill refunds 10% of its base Fury cost. This can only happen once per skill cast. This is a 1-star. So this is not worth the ring slot for your Barbarian. If this could be put on something else, maybe. The reason why is this. First off, this does not work very well for Whirlwind, because it works for the initial kill per channel. So if you're just channeling Whirlwind and you're just spinning around, you'll get 10% of your channeling cost back from the enemy you killed. And Whirlwind is consuming Fury per second. This is terrible. Now, if you run there's one build where this can get you some value, which is if you run the legendary, or the key passive, where core skills deal 135% more damage, they cost 100% more Fury. So you only get like 1 cast per Fury bar, unless you build extra Fury, which is relatively hard to do. Then this can be good. However, at that point, you know, you have to look, 10% of your base Fury cost coming back is not that great if your Fury cost is 60, 70, 80 Fury. Even at 80 Fury, you're not even getting, you know, you're getting 10% of that back, sure, because you're getting 8 Fury back. How much is that going to help you? The fact that it can only happen once per skill cast is balancing. That's to keep Whirlwind Barbarian in check, but it kind of renders it useless. Next up, for Sorceress, we have Aspect of Efficiency. Casting a basic skill reduces the mana cost of your next core or mastery skill by 15%. This does not stack. The fact that this does not stack renders this skill useless. A 15% mana cost reduction is great, but it's not very good. This is one of those aspects that you want to scale up quickly, and there are just unfortunately better ring resource regeneration options for Sorceress than this. Next up for Druid, we have Mangled Aspect. 30% chance when you are struck as a werebear to gain 1 spirit. You can get a lot of value out of this very quickly. This is a 2-star. I don't like this. I don't run this aspect, but this is very good for passive spirit regen as werebear. Werebear is melee. Werebear gets hit a lot. Werebear having this chance, you personally, you want the chance to be higher than 30%. You want this at, like, say, 50%. My knock against it is that it's only 1 spirit. If this was, say, 5 spirit, I would run this on werebear. At 1 spirit, it's simply not worth it, at least to me. But if you do have high rolls on this, it's definitely worth it, in my opinion. So that's why I'll put it at 2-star. I'm not going to be unfair. Next up, we have the Barbarian Aspect of the Relentless Arms Master. Gaining 20% increased Fury regeneration while all the damage bonuses from the Walking Arsenal key passive are active. In the current state, Walking Arsenal sucks because it only lasts 6 seconds, your bonuses. In the update that's coming, I believe it's going to 8 seconds. This can be good because you want that increased Fury generation. However, I'm going to be putting this at a 2-star. The reason why is that bonus is not very big. You want this to be a higher roll than the 20%. If you're Walking Arsenal Barbarian and you feel as though you need this, if you're using a lot of core skills in order to trigger Walking Arsenal. So let's say you have, you know, Whirlwind for your 2-handed slashing, and Upheaval for your 2-handed bludgeoning, and you're using Frenzy as your basic skill in order to get your Walking Arsenal bonuses up. I can understand why this is a aspect you need to run, even if it is at 20%. However, it is something you want a higher roll of. Next up, we have the Energizing Aspect. Damaging an elite enemy with a basic skill generates 3 energy. This is a rogue skill. I shouldn't be commenting on this, but in my opinion, I think this is a 2-star skill. That's all I'm going to say. Next up, we have the Aspect of Echoing Fury. This is a 3-star skill. Your shout skills generate you 2 Fury per second while active. Now remember that your shout skills are going to last 7.4 seconds if you build the passives into it like you should. So this essentially means that when you pop a shout, you are going to get 14 Fury. In addition to this, you can have multiple shouts active and it will stack. So if you have 2 shouts active, essentially activating those 2 shouts is going to give you, you have 14 Fury for 1 shout, you have 28 Fury for another shout, you have 42 Fury if you have all 3 shouts by the end of them. You might look at this and say, well, that's not very much, that's not a lot because it's Fury per second. The reason why you are slotting this in, though, is that you have to understand if you're running Rallying Cry, which increases Fury generation, that is affecting this skill. Meaning, if you're looking at 40% more Fury regeneration, you're close to getting an extra Fury per second while active. In addition to this, shouts are just such a key part of the barbarian build. Most people, if you're running multiple shouts, you're kind of having to run this skill. Both of your ring slots, if you run multiple shouts, are dedicated to ring options. I'm going to be skipping the offensive category because of how many are here. I will make that into a separate video after this. I want to cover the defensive ones, and then I will cut this video and go to offense, because the offensive skills are just so numerous if you look at them. So let's look at the defensive skills. Let's try and knock these out. This is a rogue skill. I will not be covering this. This is Druid. Vigorous Aspect. 10% damage reduction while shapeshifted into a werewolf. This is a 2-star. The reason why this is here, it's damage reduction. It's great. Yeah, you kind of want to run it. Here's the problem with this, though. It only works when you're shapeshifted into a werewolf. Werebear don't get it. Human form don't get it. That seems obvious. However, you lose this bonus whenever you use a skill. So what this means is that if I'm a hybrid shape-shifting druid and I'm running this, I'm not getting the full effect. This is a Mad Glee werewolf build where you are specifically building, I am werewolf only, I am werewolf/storm only, right? Then this works. It's good in that build. You do want as high of a percentage as possible. That's why it's at 2 stars, not because, you know, it's werewolf only. But just a drawback, in my opinion. Next up, Aspecting of Deflecting Barrier. This is a 1-star. Just 1 star. I don't know what to tell you. When you have a barrier active, you have a chance to ignore damage from distant enemies, meaning enemies outside of melee range. This is good. The problem is there's not a lot of barriers in the game, and the fact that you have a barrier active indicates you're trying to reduce the damage you take. The roll on it is low in the first place. It doesn't help you against melee, and it requires a barrier. So, not much more to say. Skinwalker Aspect. When you use a shape-shifting skill that changes your form, you gain 88 life. If you're at full life, you gain the same amount as Fortify. This is a numerical one, which means this will scale based off of the item power of the weapon it is put on, or the gear it is put on, I should say. This only works in shapeshift, or if you are running the aspect that keeps you in one form. If you have a human form to go alongside it, you can benefit. So, for example, if you're running wolves, where when you use the wolf skill, it turns you human for a second, and then back to your werewolf or werebear form, you can get this to proc. So you can get some niche value out of that. The fact that you can get passive healing just by, using this is nice, and the fact that you can build Fortify off of it is nice. However, this is just a difficult to slot item into a build. You have to realize that you have to throw this onto one of your 3 defensive slots, and one of those defensive slots is usually going to be keeping you in either werebear or werewolf form. So it can be very hard to justify sometimes. It is a 3-star if you're running the build. Disobedience. I kind of want to plead the 5th on this because I'm in the minority that hates disobedience. This is 2-star. If you run Disobedience is one of those core 3 defensive skills that I'm going to call a 3-star. I'm calling it a 3-star because it's one of those 3. There are 3 defensive skills that you can, well, 4 technically, but most people don't run 1, they run Disobedience. And I'm the opposite. I don't run Disobedience, I run the other one. But it's one of the skills where if you are a basic bitch character and you are trying to grind your character up, and you're a low-level character, it's like, okay, I want to increase my survivability. This is one of those core skills that it doesn't matter what the roll is on it. You slap it on, and you get value out of it. That's why I don't like Disobedience. Yes, you want this at as high of a roll of a number as possible, but the aspect itself is so good, for the majority of other people not named me, that you want this in your build no matter what. Aspect of Might. Now, this is the second skill that falls into that 3-star no matter what. Basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 2 seconds. Basically, if you have to use a basic skill as a fallback skill to generate resource, this gives you damage reduction alongside it. This is good in any aspect build. This is one of those ones that you're going to run for a long time, and if you're trying to figure out, like, okay, I need to get rid of a defensive ability, you'll kind of take this out. I will warn you, under no circumstance should you ever be slotting this onto an amulet or something. This is one of those aspects that's good from the get-go as well. It's not necessarily good at the maximum of 6 seconds. It can be good, but to me, the reason why it's not that great is because what scales is the duration, not the percentage. If the percentage is what scaled, then this would be probably a 2-star, because similar to Disobedience, you would want as high of a roll as possible. Imagine if it scaled to 40% damage reduction, but it stayed at that 2 seconds. Nearly everybody would be running this, as opposed to Disobedience. However, in my opinion, it is still a 3-star. This also stacks with a few specific niche applications, such as Frenzy on Barbarian, Lightning Strike, or Thunder Strike, whatever it is, one of the lightning basic attack on Druid, or the two-handed scythe slash, I think it's called Sever, on, is it Sever or Rend? Or Flay on Necromancer. You can get value out of that. Aspect of Bull Kathos. Leap creates an earthquake that deals X amount of physical damage. This scales based off of the item level of your item for 4 seconds. While you are standing in the earthquake, you get 5% increased damage reduction. This is a 2-star. The reason why is you want the higher damage, damage reduction roll. In addition to this, it does require leap, and it does require you to stay in place. And those are some things that don't necessarily go hand in hand for barbarians. The passive damage is nice. The damage reduction is nice. But the low roll on it is not nice. Aspect of Cyclonic Forces. This is a 3-star, and a very good 3-star at that. This is something that you never have to upgrade. Therefore, if you need to upgrade an individual piece of gear, you just come over to the Codex, pull this out, and put it on the gear. And if you have a piece of gear that has this, you don't have to, like, save it, because you need the aspect. You can just salvage it or sell it. Similar to some of the other ones, it doesn't scale in any way, therefore it's good to go. You might look at this and say, well, the aspect itself is not very good, but it is a 3-star in that it kind of renders the aspect useless on other gear. If you want it, you have it once you do the dungeon. The aspect itself is pretty good. Basically, it doubles Cyclone Armor's effectiveness from non-physical damage to also physical damage, meaning it's just flat 10% damage reduction at base. And the fact that you can give that bonus to anybody nearby, including minions and other players, makes it very team-friendly. You might be looking and saying, well, I have to use up a skill slot, and I have to use up an aspect slot for a skill that's basically giving me damage reduction, but the higher up you go, the stronger this gets. Aspect of the Protector. This is the third of the 4 key mandatory ones. This is a 3-star. This scales based off of item power. Basically, anytime you damage an elite enemy, you will receive a barrier that lasts you for 10 seconds, or until the barrier is destroyed. And this effect can only happen once every 30 seconds, meaning this essentially has a 20-second cooldown on it. This is very good. This is one of the best defensive skills in the game for active use in combat. This is right alongside Disobedience. This is right along Aspect of Might. I love this aspect. This is one of those things that if I don't have the room for it on a character, it is because my 3 defensive slots are being used by this. If you're a Necromancer and you're having a hard time finding a room for this, you might want to pop this on a shield. I would even consider running this on an amulet if you can afford it. It is that good of an aspect, in my opinion. This, to me, is the hardest of the defensive core aspects to phase out. You might look at it and say, well, the barrier isn't that great. It scales off of item power. That's kind of the reason why I've been sitting here on Barbarian, so I can explain something, right? This pair of pants right here has a item power of 639. Okay? Where is it? There it is. So this says 945, right? I put it on here. It jumps up to 1382. Okay. If you look at what I have equipped now, what I have equipped now has a higher item power. That's why it is at 1437 specifically. Right here. Here. The reason why this is just so good, though, is because of how easy it is to proc. Because elite enemies is players in PvP, any type of boss, any type of elite champion, any type of damage resistance aura in World Tiers 3 or 4. Those are very common, and you want to fight them for a bonus experience. Therefore, this is one of the better aspects to run. Next up, we have the aspect of Numbing Wrath. Each point of fury generated while at maximum fury will grant you 4 Fortify. This is a 1-star. The reason why is 90% of barbarians do not get to maximum fury. Or don't stay at maximum fury. Or they don't over-generate past maximum fury. Yes, you can get Fortify off of it. But not only that, the amount of Fortify that you are getting is not very good. And you might look and say, but if I generate 10 extra Fury, that's 40 Fortify. True, but look at how much Fortify you actually need. This is not percentage of Fortify. It's a flat Fortify. And it doesn't scale based off of item power. It's not very good. Snowguard's Aspect. This is a 3-star. If you are Ice, Blizzard, Sorceress, you're running this. You need to make a slot for this. You might look and say, well, it's not very good because it means I have to sit in the Blizzard. However, there is an enchantment on Sorceress where Blizzard will follow you for a small duration, randomly. This will proc off of that. In addition, the max roll on this item is 25%. There is not a very big difference between the low and the high roll, meaning even at a low roll, this skill is good. Yes, the extra percentages can be nice, but even as a low roll type of skill, you don't have to worry about hoarding and obsessing over that particular aspect because it is very good. Even as a low roll aspect, it's still particularly good. This is a rogue skill. I will not be commenting on that. This is a rogue skill. I will not be commenting on that. This is a rogue skill. I will comment on it. Cheat Death Aspect. I'm going to call it Cheat Death Aspect because that's what it should be called. You take 15% less damage from crowd control enemies. Automatically, right there, that makes it a 3-star aspect. Just wanted to mention that. Whenever a crowd control enemy deals direct damage to you, you gain movement speed for X amount of time. I don't really give a shit about that. Just damage reduction from crowd controlled enemies is very good on a class that can crowd control enemies relatively easily. Very good aspect. Doesn't matter the roll. Good job. Next up, we have Sorceress. Aspect of the Unwavering. Taking direct damage has a 2% chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensive skills. And this is a 3-star aspect. You might look and say, well, that's kind of stupid because either you need to run multiple defensive skills or you need to have an insane amount of damage taken in order to proc this effect. The thing that's important to note about this is that you might look at it and say it's 2%, but it is cooldown reduction. And it is not reducing the cooldown by X amount. It is completely resetting the cooldown. If you run 2 defensive skills, which most sorcerers do, most sorcerers are running any combination of Ice Armor, Ice, Frost Nova, Flame Shield, and Teleport. I know a lot of I run Flame Shield on every single build. Meaning, some builds I'm running a second one, which is usually Frost Nova, or it's usually Ice Armor. A lot of people run Teleport and Flame Shield, or Teleport and Ice Armor. This is just so good, because Yes, the percentage is low. Yes, you want this on a higher roll, but it is just so good and so significantly valuable for the reset of the cooldown. You could literally proc this skill. You could run Frost Nova. It goes on cooldown. It's a 20-second cooldown. The boss hits you. It procs this. Frost Nova triggers again. Like, that alone is so very good. Next up, we have Aspect of Tempering Blows. Swapping weapons 6 times gains a decent chunk of Fortify. This, to me, is a 2-star. The amount of Fortify you gain is what scales up. The low roll on it is kind of trashy. If you run Walking Arsenal and you're swapping builds a lot, most barbarians don't do that. Most barbarians tend to build around one particular weapon and use their other 3 weapon slots for just straight aspects and affixes. They don't tend to use them actively in combat. If you are Walking Arsenal and you're trying to use all of your weapons, this is very good. I'm putting this at a 2-star just because it is relatively easy to proc, and it's a significant amount of Fortify compared to other skills available to you. However, I just don't personally think it's that great. Iron Blood Aspect. This is Barbarian. This gains damage reduction for each nearby bleeding enemy up to a maximum amount, and this is a 1-star skill. I have previously mentioned that the bleed build is very easy to proc on Barbarian with something like Tough as Nails. Here's the problem. This is only giving you 10% maximum damage reduction on the low roll. It requires 5 enemies in melee range of you to be bleeding for that effect. This is way too hard to proc at maximum value to be valuable enough to slot. Especially when the bleed stun is much better, even though it's lucky hit chance. It is more reliable than this skill is. Aspect of the Iron Warrior. Now, I just want to mention, in my opinion, this aspect should be fucking base for Iron Skin. The main reason why I don't run Iron Skin is this aspect is mandatory. This is a 3-star aspect because if you are running Iron Skin, this one aspect is mandatory in your build. You have to have it because it grants Iron Skin unstoppable for the duration and a little bit of damage reduction, meaning that Iron Skin's barrier is less likely to be destroyed. However, I just personally believe this should be base kit in Iron Skin, and I refuse to run Iron Skin until they make this aspect base kit in it and rework this. There is no reason to me why they made this an aspect other than to be annoying and force Barbarian to lose a defensive option for this stupid skill. Next up, we have Snow Veiled Aspect. Again, this is a 3-star. This is kind of shitty that Ice Armor, which is a barrier, doesn't grant you unstoppable for the duration. Or at least for the 2 seconds like this does. This makes it to where casting Ice Armor makes you unstoppable for 2 seconds. This is 3-star because it's kind of mandatory if you run Ice Armor. I do find myself having a hard time fitting this onto my Blizzard Sorceress because I find that the damage reduction from Blizzard is just stronger. I run Flame Shield anyways, so I tend to use Flame Shield as my defensive option. That is my personal thing, though. I think that this is great, obviously, because it's extra crowd control immunity, so it's 3-star. Last aspect that I'm going to cover for the video, aspect of the Mending Stone. The duration of Earth and Bulwark is increased by 6 seconds. In addition, killing an enemy with Earth skills replenishes X amount of active Earth and Bulwark's barrier. If you run Earth and Bulwark, this is at least vying for a spot just for the increase in duration. See, if you don't need the barrier part of Earth and Bulwark, if you're just using Earth and Bulwark for the crowd control for the duration, you've essentially got an extra 6 seconds of crowd control immunity. This is very good. However, if your Earthen Bulwark barrier is being destroyed a lot, then this becomes less valuable, because the secondary part of the skill that actually levels is what comes into play, where your Earth skills, which knocks out Werewolf, Storm Druids, then your Earth skills will replenish. Now, if you're Nature's Fury and you are a Storm Druid, your Nature's Fury Earth cast will give you the barrier. I like that. However, this is not increasing your maximum barrier. It is only replenishing your active barrier. In my opinion, the main value just comes from the duration increase of 6 seconds, so it's a 3-star skill. The actual leveling of the skill doesn't necessarily matter. Alright, so that is me covering everything that is not the offensive aspect. So there are 59 of them. They make up 59 out of 115, which is right around half of the aspects. It took an hour and 15 minutes just to do this part. So, I will have a part 2 of this. I will not be releasing it tonight. I will probably release it another hot night. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed.